You belong on every ground your feet grace, so don't ever feel out of place. Take up space and belong. This earth is your birthplace. Hey loves, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to do a review on a Netflix movie, or is this, I think this is Prime Video, a Prime Video movie called Chemical Hearts. Most of this review is gonna be romance, but I'm also gonna throw a little other genres in sometimes. But most of my reviews are gonna be romance. But I'm gonna get right into it. Um, Chemical Hearts is starring Austin Abrams as Henry Page, Lily Reinhart as Grace Town, Coral Pena as Cora, Sarah Jones as Sud, John Lemon as Dominique Sawyer, and Kara Young as La. So it starts off with Henry and Grace being called to the office, and the teacher tells them that they are going to be the editor in chief. Well, Henry is going to be the editor in chief, and Grace is going to assist him. But Grace turns it down. She says she doesn't want to do it. Henry goes after her to see why she doesn't want to do it, and he misses his bus in the process of like trying to talk to her and trying to understand why she turned it down. So they end up walking home together, but on like the opposite sides of the road because she's like ignoring him. Like she seems like one of those teenagers that's like depressed and like a loner, doesn't really want to be bothered by somebody. But Henry has other plans. He wants to bother her because I guess she's interesting to him. Grace offers to give Henry a ride home since they get to her house first. And she was like, I got a car. I could give you a ride home since you live further down the road. And he's like, okay, cool. So they get in a car. Well, so they get to the car and she gets in the passenger side and he's looking at her like, okay, I thought you was going to drive me home. So I got to drive home or whatever. They start talking about poetry. They had a conversation about poetry or whatever. I think the reason why he was interested in her because uh I think that he saw her reading a book or something like that he liked. But they started talking about poetry. This happened before he ends up driving himself home, and she basically tells him that she doesn't like driving or whatever, but she doesn't explain any of her actions. She just acts, and he kind of just deals with it. So when they get to his house, she leaves her car there and walks back home. And I was like, what sense does that make? Like, what is wrong with her? Is she slow? Does her elevator not go to the top floor? Like, what is it? Because I didn't understand what was happening. When Henry gets in the house, his family asks him if he gets the editing job at school, and he tells them yes, because this is something that's important to him. He wants to be a writer, or whatever. So he's happy about it, and they congratulate him. Then they ask him about Grace because, of course, family is nosy. They were looking outside or whatever, and saw that he was with her, and they was asking him questions about her. So he goes into his room. He starts looking at pictures of her on the internet, like on her social media, and he reads a poem. Like while he's looking at her pictures, he's like reciting a poem, like the narrator, because he's narrating his story or whatever. So like while he's looking at pictures of her, he's narrating a poem. In the next scene, when they go back to school, the teacher tells the kids who write the school paper, the kids that work on the school paper, what he expects from them, and he introduces Henry and Grace as the editors. Grace tells Henry she isn't writing, but she'll help him with editing. Like she's like, I'm not writing, I'm not a writer, I don't want to write anymore or whatever. And of course he's confused. He's like, okay, like why are you behaving this way? I am in confusion. But she never explains herself. After school, Henry meets up with Grace as she's walking home to tell her he finished the poem they were talking about in an earlier scene. While he's talking to her, of course, his bus leaves him, so he asks her for another ride. And it happens again. Like when they get to her house, he asks her for a ride home. He ends up driving himself. She leaves her car and she walks back home. Then he asks her to hang out after he drives himself home after school. And Grace tells him to meet her at 6 and bring a loaf of bread. So later on at 6, they meet and she leads him to this man made pond in this like old, like abandoned factory building or whatever. And the pond came from like the rain and like the part of the building being in water, I guess. Like maybe there's a lake or pond or something like that nearby. Um and there are these fish in the pond. They kind of look like koi fish, but they're small, so I don't think they're koi fish. I don't know, unless they're like baby ones. And they feed the fish bread. Grace asks him if he's ever had a girlfriend. He tells her no. She asked why, and he said he's not really good at it. Like he's not good at talking to girls or like in relationships and stuff like that. She tells him about a car accident she was in that left her crippled because she walks with a cane. Like she uses a cane or whatever. And that's why it didn't make sense to me that she was like leaving her car at his house and walking home because she was walking with a cane. It's like this should be hard on you, right? They start talking about philosophies and he asks her if she's sure she doesn't want to write for the paper. She doesn't answer him. She gets out of the pool and shows him something she carved into the wall and tells him she used to be a vandal. Then she abruptly says she's tired and leaves him there. Like she's very like all over the place, like she's flaky, like she's secretive and stuff like that, and it just makes him more intrigued by her. Henry does pottery as he talks to his sister about heartbreak. She starts crying as she talks about a breakup that she had. I'm guessing she was married or engaged, and she ended up breaking up with her ex, and it really like affected her, and she's still like dealing with it or whatever. I think she moved back in with her family or whatever, and she's dealing with it. He offers to get their mom to like help because he like she crying and he like sitting there like, okay, like what do I do? Like do I go get somebody? Like do I hug you? Like I'm confused. Same as me. I don't know how to I don't know how to respond when somebody starts crying in front of me. Like I'm gonna just sit there and look at you like. But anyway, he offers to get their mom and she declines. So he tries to comfort her himself. Like he gives her a hug and lets her cry on his shoulder. In the next scene, at school, they brainstorm ideas for the paper. The teacher doesn't like any of their ideas, so he asks Grace because she's the only one that's not talking, but she says she doesn't know. Then she asks to go to the bathroom. Like it seems like she's hiding something because she's refusing to take part in activities, and like she just sketchy. Like she just be flaking on plans, and she just be quiet and she stays to herself and she doesn't talk to anyone. So it's weird. Like her behavior is really weird. On the bus ride home, Henry's friends tell him to follow Grace to see where she's going since she won't open up about anything. Like she goes after school, she goes like off somewhere all the time, and like he be wondering where she going, but he he doesn't ask her because he knows she's not going to respond to him. So they tell him to ask her like go see where she's going, follow her one day. So later that afternoon, Grace goes into the forest and Henry follows her to a grave where she lays flowers and talks to like she's talking to whoever grave it is. After she leaves, Henry looks on the gravestones to see who grave it is. The person the John Lemon. The Dominic Sawyer is the person whose grave it is, I think. So Henry goes home and he researches the person. He finds out Grace, it's Grace's ex boyfriend who got into the car accident with her and died. Like he didn't survive it. He didn't survive the accident, but she did. And she's like dealing with she's still grieving him or whatever. So that's why that kind of explains her behavior. One of Henry's friends texts him that Grace was near the track field and tells him to go see what's up with her because she was acting weird. He asks his dad to use the car, and his dad asks him where he wants to go, but he doesn't want to tell them. He ends up making up a lie, but his dad catches him in it and tells him to walk. Henry goes to the field to see her trying to run. Like when he goes to the field, Grace is like trying to run, but she can't, of course, because she is crippled by the car accident. She gets upset with herself for not being able to, and she breaks down, and she like hit her legs with the crutches or whatever, because she was trying to use crutches this time to run. And I don't know if like her leg doesn't have any feeling or whatever, but she was hitting it pretty hard. When Henry goes back home, he texts Grace to see if she's okay, and she tells him she is now. Then she asks him to meet her in the library tomorrow because she has an idea. When they meet in the library, Grace shows Henry these books that are about teens who committed suicide. He asks her if she's thinking about doing it, and she explains the trend she sees in a book where the authors write about two teens who can't be together so they commit suicide. He asks her again if she's suicidal, and she tells him no. But she tells him like, no, I'm not suicidal, but I've thought about it. But I've thought about not being here before. Like I've thought about leaving everything behind and not being here. She tells him all of their teen years should be talked about because of the angst teens feel. Then she said their paper should be about teenage limbo. He agrees. Of course he agrees because like at this point he really just want to basically impress her and do whatever it is that she wants to do because he okay, La, one of the girls on the newspaper team or whatever you call it, talks about how being in limbo affects the teenage brain. Henry tells them they need to discuss what scares them and things they keep inside because they're afraid to be judged. Grace asks him if he has anything he keeps inside, and he told her he was going to write it, but he starts talking about how he felt when a friend of his died. He had a magazine his friend gave him, but he buried it under the tree the friend used to hang himself. He said that the magazine haunted him, but burying it taught him the gravity of death. They're like having this like real deep conversation about the things that they like faced as teenagers and how it keeps them in limbo and how it's something that needs to be talked about because it's not taken seriously and it should be. On the way home, Henry asks Grace why she gave up writing, and she tells him after her friend died, she was asked to write his eulogy, but she couldn't find the words. He brings up how it's funny that he can't find the words when he talks, and she can't find the words when she writes. So it's like you aren't able to write and I'm not able to express my feelings, and he thought that was funny. Okay, then he asked her to go to the movies after they hang out, and she said she couldn't go. He starts asking her questions about her life before she became disabled, And she tells him she used to run track and write for the school literary magazine. They get to know each other. He asks her to go to the football game with him, and she says she can't. They continue to get to know each other. Then he asks her to go to a Halloween party, and she finally agrees to go somewhere with him. She asks him to come in his house. He tells her yeah. He introduces her to his family. Then they go to his room. He tells her about his pottery. She tries to kiss him but stops when she hears a song she plays in her car, because they listen to the song every time they get in her car. And so Henry has this like obsession with like getting to know her. So he found the song and downloaded it, and he plays it while they're talking, and he thinks that it's going to impress her, but it actually doesn't. It upsets her. She storms out and cries because it reminds her of her dead ex. He apologizes to her. She kisses him. Then she breaks away from him and cries. He tries to console her, but she won't let him. She tells him she's not one of his vases. Like, you can't break me. I'm broken. You can't break me and fix me. Like, I'm not a project. Like, stop trying to fix me. She said, I'm too messed up. Like, so stop trying to fix me. Like, I'm not one of your vases. And he kind of like is sad that like she won't let him in or whatever. But you could tell she's clearly broken. She's still mourning the death of her ex-boyfriend. So she's not okay. Because of that little situation that they had, they stopped talking. So Henry tries to make up an excuse not to go to the Halloween party, but his friend La pushes him to go. At first, Henry is having a horrible time until Grace shows up, of course. Because the only reason why he wanted to go was so she could go. So they could like go on a date or whatever. He gets her a drink and goes to talk to her. He tells her she's hot. He asks if she's okay, and she said she is in the moment. He calls her confusing, and she calls herself confused. Like, he like, you so confused, and she like, I'm confused. Like, duh, nigga. I went through a lot. Like, I don't know what's going on with me either. Like, why you on my nuts? Get off my nuts. Law finally talks to the girl she has a crush on, and the girl tells her she doesn't know how to label her feelings for her, but she knows she has them. Law tells her to just be, and they kiss. She's like, I mean, forget about the feelings right now. Like, let's just be. Like, let's just live in a moment. And, they kiss. Then it goes back to Henry and Grace, who is dancing. They're both clearly drunk, high, or both. They go into his room and make out. Like, after they leave the party, because the party is not at his house. After they leave the party, they go to his house and go to his room, and they start making out. Grace stops him and begins taking off her tights. Henry caresses her scars. Oh yeah. She tells him she hopes he doesn't have high expectations about sex because she's rusty. She hasn't had sex in a long time. And he's like, well, I hope you don't have high hopes because I've never had sex before. Like, this is my first time. This is my first time having sex, so neither one of us should expect anything of each other. He gets a condom and she puts it on him because he's too nervous to do it. Then they have sex, which is probably like, they probably shouldn't have done that. Because both of them are like messed up. She tells him not to try to be good at it, but just be there with her. Like, she kind of is trying to coach him into what to do because he's like in his head too much. He's thinking about it too hard. So she's like, don't try to be good at it. Just be here in the moment with me. After they have sex, Grace ghosts Henry. So he calls her and leaves a message. He thinks the reason why she ghosts him is because he wasn't good at sex, so he promises to be better next time. Grace finally texts him and tells him to meet her outside his house tomorrow at noon. She pulls up in her car. Henry is shocked that she's actually driving. She drives them to the site of the car accident and opens up to him about it. She tells him she needed his support to come there. She finally tells him what the engraving on the factory meant. It meant, "Save me and I will save you." They kiss and they start hanging out at school together. She starts being social and, she seems fine. Like, she seems like she's good. When they celebrate finishing the first issue of the school paper. Then they leave to go home. There's a car in her yard when they get to her house. She tells Henry to stay outside when he asks whose car is it. It was her mom or whatever. Henry asks who she lives with because he doesn't feel like he knows her family. He tells her he didn't know how to help her, and she tells him don't. Because he's like, "I'm trying to help you. I need to know this stuff so I can know how to help you." And she like, "Don't. I don't need your help. Stop trying to help me. Stop trying to fix me." So after a little argument, she doesn't show up to school on the anniversary of her car accident, so he's worried. He gets off the bus and runs to her house to see if she's fine, but an older guy is there, and he invites him in and introduces him to his wife. He tells Henry to wait upstairs since Grace will be home soon. While Henry is upstairs, he snoops around Grace's room and realizes she doesn't live there. Like, this is somebody else's room. This is somebody else's house. Like, what is going on? Like, this is not even her house. Like, why is she here? When she gets there, she explains why she was there. The room she was in was actually her ex's room. They argue and he tell her to stop leading her on. Like, stop leading me on. You clearly are not over this man, but you're using me to try to get over him, and it's hurting me because I'm in love with you, basically. She tells him that she's confused, and he admits that he loves her. She tells him she's not ready to be better. Like, I want to sit in this depression for a while. Like, I'm not ready. He tells her he accepts who she is, but he needs her to let him in. He asks her why she kisses him like she's in love with him and she's not in love with him. She says it's the only way she knows how. Like, this is the only way I know how to kiss. Because, like, I've been kissing that other nigga, and I was in love with him. So I pretend that you're him and I kiss you like you're him. And I kiss you like you're him, so it feels like I love you because I love him. Basically. Like, Grace is messed up in her head. Henry's dad asks him what's wrong, and he won't tell them because he feels like they don't understand because they've had a good relationship. So his sister goes to talk to him since she understands because she had a failed relationship. She asks him what happened, and he says they broke up because she's in love with someone else. His sister explains how heartbreak feels to prepare him for it. Like, she's coaching him. This is how you're going to feel after this. It's not going to feel better. And this is how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be, or whatever. She tells him about her progress to show him things will get better, because she starts talking about her situation and where she started and now where she is, to show him things will get better. He goes through the heartbreak. But out of the blue, Dominic's dad texts Henry because Grace is missing. Henry runs to the abandoned factory she took him to and finds her crying in the pond. She's hysterical and she looks at him and thinks that he's Dominic. She apologizes for making him wreck. Henry hugs her to calm her down. That's when she realizes it's Henry and tells him how she feels. She takes off the dress and crown and leaves it in the water. Henry drops her back off at home. Her family is happy she's back because, like, she been going through it, basically. They've been worried about her or whatever. It was good that he knew where to find her, but he definitely wasn't able to help her. So I'm not gonna say he wasn't able to help her. She was able to get her feelings out because of him. So that's help. But like she was a lot for him to deal with. I was like, you doing too much, Henry. In the next scene, the teacher announces that Grace is taking time. The teacher announces that Grace is taking time off school, and when she returns, she doesn't want to do the paper anymore. Henry is like narrating his feelings about teenage limbo and like how it feels to be in limbo or whatever. And when he sees Grace in the hallway at school, he turns the other way to avoid her. So now they're at this stage where they're avoiding each other. They don't want to talk about what's going on or whatever. At the end of the movie, they finally talk to each other to catch up. She congratulates him for getting into college. She tells him she's taken a year off to figure things out and she's going to continue to go to therapy. Then she tells him he's an extraordinary collection of atoms. They kiss and hug. She slips a paper in his pocket before she walks off. After she's gone, he takes the paper out and unfolds it to see the poem he wrote for her. He decides to walk home, so his friends offer to walk with him because like she's not with him anymore. So, they want to support him because they know he's been through a lot. So they get off the bus and they decide to walk home with him. The movie ends with them walking home together. I give this movie 8 out of 10 stars. It was a good teen romance movie. It covered a few themes like teenage limbo, teen angst, and hardships in life and relationships. And it covered how teens feel with death, losing someone they love. I feel like that's a subject that's not talked about enough when it comes to teenagers, and like you see movies and stuff for them, but I don't think, even in movies where it is that is a theme, they don't really talk about the feelings that they feel and how it affects their life from that point on when they lose somebody, and how a lot of the times teenagers don't know how to deal with death, and a lot of times there is nobody to help them deal with this, so they end up going on a downward spiral until they're out of control, and then they're forced to get some help. But I think that it was a good movie overall. Like, it was sad. I did shed some tears. They did get some tears out of me, some thug tears. But it was good. I do think that Grace was way too much for Henry. He couldn't deal with her, and I feel like as a teenager, coming across somebody who goes through way more than you have, dealing with them is so hard, but you try because you got your feelings involved. And I do feel like adults a lot of the time will ignore teenagers' feelings because they feel like, oh, it's just puppy love. You're too young to feel this, you're too young to feel that. And that's not true. We have emotions since we are born. So, you're never too young to have feelings about things. But I really like this movie because it explored those themes, and it kind of starts a conversation about teen angst because it's a real thing. But let me know if you've seen this movie. If you're gonna watch it after this review, come back and let me know what you think. How do you feel about Grace and the way that she kind of was stringing Henry along? How do you feel about Henry? Did you feel bad for him? Did it make you cry? Or am I just a softie? But anyways, like, it was a good movie overall. I think it's worth watching. I think y'all should check it out and let me know what y'all think about it. Thanks for watching this review. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Before you go, check out my website at srgraham.org and subscribe to my mailing list to get exclusive updates on works in progress, other news, and blog posts. Thank you.